in the dairy industry, we could make vanilla ice cream about 30 ways, but the SKU going to the grocer was the same, right? But it was still vanilla ice cream, and it still had the same content as far as sugar, et cetera. So, but different recipes, and we needed to know which recipe was used.
Hey, welcome back to the Turnkey 365 ERP Academy. Today we're going to get into one of the places where ERP starts. I mean, there's two real big things, right? Of course, there's the finance side, and that's crucially important. But the finances don't happen unless you're actually working with items in the case of inventory. And item is that piece, okay? It is that one thing that really kicks it all off. It's inventoriable, it's manufacturable, it's shippable, it's all the different stuff. And so we're going to take a look at the items here and the differences between Microsoft Dynamics GP and Microsoft Dynamics 365 Business Central. Once again, I am joined by Kurt Quiggle, representing the GP side and our expert there, and Bob Richardson, representing the Business Central side from our amazing consultant team. Welcome, gents.
Hey, welcome.
Good afternoon.
Thank you for having me back. So, the items. Anything that has a master, an item master, must be crucially important. And having gone through 35 years of manufacturing-related life, their items are near and dear to my heart. So, Kurt, why don't we kick it off with you, okay? And because really we're looking at how we can handle an item. What does it look like? What are the things we can do with it in GP? And what are the kind of strengths and limitations in that platform?
Absolutely. And again, we're not here to show preference one way or the other, but
No,
really
sir.
just, really just shine the light on, what the packages do and what, typical clientele needs out of the inventory module within GP and or BC. So let me share my application here, guys. Awesome, there's GP. So without too much ado, right, I have the inventory item card open within GP. Again, unique identifier for an item. A place for a description is included. Short descriptions, generic descriptions, different ways we would refer to that item really when we just are looking at it from that widget, that piece that it happens to be. And then, of course, other things around that item need to be captured. If it's an item that we stock, whether or not it's a service item. So we may add labor to an invoice. We may add, you name it, configuration, things like that. And it's just a line item when we're selling things. We can have that service item. When it's a service type item that I'm referring to, we don't have to maintain balances. We don't have to have 10 on hand. We don't have to bring it in. We don't have to move it out. So that's where the services come into play. Another type of item that we can create and track within GP is a kitted item. And a kit is, again, a grouping of components. So maybe I'm selling parts to remanufacture a hydraulic cylinder, and it's going to contain O-rings, seals, clips, etc. I can contain that on that kit, right? So if I sell that kit, I'm selling all of those pieces that make up that remanufacturing kit. So using the word kit in a description is terrible, guys. I apologize for that, but it's best word.
But everybody does that. You're going to call it the type, but all those descriptions, it does end up being kit. In the manufacturing world and distribution world, they do think of it as a kit, and I don't think that we can underscore the importance of that kit here. So sorry to slow this down a little bit, but I don't think we can underscore the importance of it because it is everywhere, from manufacturing to service kits of parts that you would sell in post-sale to value-added distributors to any sort of mix and match part that is out there, or even creating a kit, an assembly of parts so that you can send it to another facility as a complete set of parts to be assembled or integrated at a different stage. So all those different scenarios I've run across so many times, and I think the crit is I think the kit is really crucial.
It is, and again, as you've mentioned, so many projects I've been involved with, it ends up being one of the saving graces as we're talking about, how items move
Mm-hmm.
throughout a facility and how they're sold or again moved, um, and we can group them together and call it that kit, that
Mm-hmm.
bundle. In GP, that kit is the best way to think of it is a bundle of goods being moved
Mm-hmm.
at the same time. It can be priced uniquely. However, we don't count a kit. We only count its components under
Mm-hmm.
it. So I
Mm-hmm.
can't say I have 10 of those kits on hand because they don't really exist,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's a fictitious grouping, so to speak. Um,
But that would be a sales inventory item, right? With a different part, with a separate bill of material where you would bring all those things
Absolutely.
up into there. When I
Yep.
first got into ERP, I used an old system called Man. I may have even mentioned that in our last episode. And we used to have a phantom assembly, which is essentially
Absolutely.
what that was. And that way we would have able to advance some custom set of components to the next level. And then they would feed through to the higher level bill of material in terms of inventory count and that sort of thing. So it's interesting the differences between the systems, which is why we're doing a comparison today, because every system is just that little bit different in kind of where it came from and how it evolved up from its original architecture.
Absolutely. That was a good one to really to phone in or hone in phone. Oh my goodness, been on support too long today.
Well, thanks
But
for doing that. Our customers appreciate it.
yeah, no worries, no worries. Other items on that list, again, an item type, you could mark it as discontinued. In GP, if it's marked to discontinued, we can continue to sell that item. It's just a classification at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Within this list, there's once you set a type, whether it's a kit, a service fee, or inventory, it really stays that, right? It doesn't
Mm-hmm.
evolve into anything else. It's
Mm-hmm.
pretty much a fixed item.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we can move into some of the other pertinent information we track within GP around an item card. Um, what do you think? A little,
Yes,
little
please.
deeper?
Yes,
Awesome,
please.
awesome,
There's
awesome.
so much
So,
to the item. We could do this for the next 2 hours.
well, we could, except when we look at that GP window, there's not that many fields to talk about,
Mm-hmm.
right? So
Mm-hmm.
tends to be one of the areas in the deployments I've been involved in where we really want that little bit more, but
Mm-hmm.
we're not going to cover all of it today. But again,
Mm-hmm.
valuation methods available within GP,
Mm-hmm.
pretty standard out of the box
Mm-hmm.
accounting methodology. Where it gets into some of the uniqueness again is an item taxable, non-taxable, or do we worry about our taxes based on who's buying it,
Mm-hmm.
right? So
Yep.
we start getting deeper into that accounting layer at that point. Um, Unit of measure schedules, always a long conversation during a deployment, right? To get to the
Always.
bottom of how does this particular ERP system quantify things,
Mm-hmm.
right? And in GP, we take it to the smallest movable countable unit of measure. So
Mm-hmm.
in the world of beverages, if we have a 12 pack, 6-pack can,
Mm-hmm.
our base unit of measure would be can.
Mm-hmm.
And stacking on top of that then are the combinations I can build off of that can all the way up
Mm-hmm.
to pallet, truck,
Mm-hmm.
etc. Um, and then rolling into some of the other item attributes we start getting interested in. Um, Again, the idea of if I were out of something,
Mm-hmm.
is there another substitute item that could take its place in a
Mm-hmm.
sales order?
Mm-hmm.
As well as here's the magic sauce, right? Am I tracking serial numbers, lot numbers? Okay.
Oh, well, that's an entirely that's an
That's
entirely different episode that I want to get to because it's crucially important for medical manufacturing, defense manufacturing, food manufacturing. Gosh, so many different things. So any place where
absolutely.
reliability and traceability are important. So.
Yep. And as you were talking about some of the attributes that we like to layer in on top of an item, we have some user-defined fields available in GP
Mm-hmm.
to again add some some extra information about that item, right?
Yep.
In the sense of grouping it, categorizing it, those
Mm-hmm.
type of things. So,
Mm-hmm.
a manufacturer, a style, a feature. These are
Mm-hmm.
things I've created. This is
Mm-hmm.
blank slate for our users. They can name
Mm-hmm.
these fields what they want and kind of track what they would like to within that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there's also additional information here as far as, if we were to talk about cycle counts, that's probably another session as well. How do we account for that inventory and what do we count and when?
Yes,
GP
please.
utilizes ABC codes in the
Mm-hmm.
sense of, my high moving items, my low moving items, what's important to count,
Mm-hmm.
and when do I want to count it?
Mm-hmm.
And again, that's really at that high level, um, GP's structure around an inventory master card,
Mm-hmm.
that item, that widget that I want to
Mm-hmm.
move.
Mm-hmm. Well, a couple of things strike me there. So one, when I look at the first screen here, it depends on
Sorry.
the structure, right? So you may have an administrative person who's entering those items. You may have an engineering person who's entering those items. You may have someone in the supply chain who's entering those items. And when you start getting into tax schedules and valuation method, now valuation method may be relatively standard in that we're using FIFO or LIFO or what have you, probably across all of the organization, certainly across most of it, so it's relatively straightforward. When you start getting into tax schedule, depending on the understanding of the person and the standard processes of the company, you might now have to take that item, get it entered, and then hand it off to someone in accounting if you're doing something like that. You may not, but to me, the important part is how are you training your team? What systems and processes are you creating so that you can avoid the handoff if at all possible when you do that? That
Yeah.
I have seen other systems where they focus primarily on the engineering aspect, if you will.
Mhm.
And they don't get into tax schedule and that kind of thing because that's applied later on in a process or a disparate area. So there's always going to be differences between systems, again, depending on how the architecture was originally created and evolved. And
Yeah,
and business understanding has evolved. I mean, truly, things
Oh,
are
yep.
different than they were 30 years ago, 35 years ago when I first got into my first MRP system.
Oh, absolutely. And to support that logic, right? You can see on my screen the items in red
Mm-hmm.
are the required information to create and save an item, right?
Right.
So,
Mm-hmm.
once that's done, the ability to make some other changes and edits that can happen again from an accounting team member or another team member, those are attributes that can be added at a later time.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
out of the gate, we're going to have just that initial record being created and saved to the database needs those main fields filled in. After
Mm-hmm.
that, yeah, it flows through. Different people touch them. Most companies, like you said, not everybody holds all of the cards in creating that item. They just don't know all of the facts.
And when when it comes to that ERP implementation, that's the perfect time to erase the whiteboard, okay, and say how can we eliminate the handoff so we can improve our return on investment and time to value. You have that opportunity to consider what's the best way of doing things, not just apply a great big expensive calculator on top of the exact processes you already do.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. Just real lightly too, and again, it's probably another session. We get so many ideas when we get together, but pricing, in the sense that our price lists within GP, again, can be based in different ways, whether it's going to be a straight up currency amount, price based on list, a percent based on current cost, et cetera. So
mm-hmm,
we have some good pricing structure within GP
mm-hmm,
in the sense of being able to set up price levels and price lists for our customers.
mm-hmm,
But it is more aligned with our customer than it is with our item itself.
mm-hmm.
So we can have multiple pricing groups, multiple price lists, but we assign that then to the customer in order
Yep.
to know how that is going to be priced. So again,
And,
topic for another day.
yep.
Um,
Oh,
so I'm absolutely curious on what that looks like in BC in a sister product here.
oh, so am I. I want to see. I want to see it. I want to show it to everybody. Bob, why don't you do just that?
That sounds like my cue. So I'll go ahead and share my screen. You should be seeing my lab. Um,
We
so
can.
again, this is my role center for Business Central, and right now I'm logged in as the business manager for evaluation, but I have other choices that would give me a different layout.
And
So
that's important
inventory,
in that what I was just mentioning relative to handoffs and that sort of thing. Having those controls, you may not want certain functions setting things related to finance and costing methods and that sort of thing. It could be something that you have someone in standards accounting is doing. And certainly there's some level of ability to control anything in the system. So, but we're going to get to that on a different day.
yeah, exactly. And it's not just control, it's user friendliness as far as what do you have to wade through to get your job done while you're in Business Central, for instance.
Oh, does
But
the
anyway,
user
I'll just
experience
stick here
matter?
because,
Huh.
huh?
Does the user experience matter? Huh. Go figure.
I think it seems to, yes. But anyway, up here at the top is some fast links to the job that I'm trying to get done. And let's just
Perfect.
go ahead and click on items, since that was the discussion of the day. What you're going to see come up is the list of items that are in the system right now. Um, so it's more of a table view. And out of the box, you can see the help that's available on the screens that you're navigating to.
Is that a pop-up help menu in the bottom left corner? Did I just see that?
It was, and when you first get into Business Central as a user, it'll guide you through a lot of um, little helpful tours, and I can turn it off right here. So if
Okay.
I've seen them all, I can disable it, and I think I will this time. Just
That was actually nice to see, though. That's back to that self-help idea when we're in a new environment, being able to find our own way, which many of us like to be independent in our jobs. It's nice to have things like that pop up and tell us, how do I get there? What do I do next? That's pretty cool.
it
It'll
is.
certainly
And
facilitate the
you've
new employee.
distracted me. I'm off topic, way off topic. A new feature in Business Central is the availability of product videos, which kind of give you a quick
Sure.
overview of some of the
Well, let's bookmark
areas.
that. Let's bookmark that for
Yeah.
another episode. But I will tell you that
Did
if
you
you've
see
got
me?
the company who's moving from GP to BC, isn't that crucially important, right?
It
It
is.
is.
And if I clicked
For
on
user
one, it would take
adoption
me.
and yeah.
Yeah.
Very
So
cool.
you see, I bookmarked it like you asked me to. But these will take you to YouTube videos that describe different areas of BC. But
Excellent.
we're here to talk about items.
We are.
So as soon as my screen comes off, I can click on any of these items, but what we're looking at right now is the table view. So Business Central is built on tables,
Mm-hmm.
but every time you click into one of the entries in a table, it takes you to what's called a card. Um, so we'll click into the bicycle card and see what it tells us.
That's kind of nice too. That nomenclature of a card has persisted through a lot of the Microsoft products.
It Yes, and for us even older folk, the old Rolodex
Yep.
full of either customers, vendors, items that flows through where you can spin it around and get to pull out the card that you want to work with, and etc. But here we are. This one's already set up. It's assigned an item number to us, and
Okay.
we can add a description to that. You mentioned being able to block an item. We can do that. and we can describe whether it's a service item or a non-inventory item. In this case, it is an inventory type item.
So in terms of, so just pause here for a second. So the number that's assigned, so the system is assigning that number, or can it be custom for the organization as well?
They can be custom,
Okay.
yes. But if you want to use the built-in numbering system, it's called a number series, and you can assign it to any of the entries that you want to make in Business Central. But here,
well, it's a crucially important point in that the human mind has the predilection to assigning significance to different portions of a part number. I've seen the part numbering systems over and over again, and I'm sure you fellas have too. And eventually, when you are assigning significance, you run out of digits because your combinations grow and grow and grow. So having a unique number that's auto-generated and then assigning a specification and having a good description system and set of fields that help you to really narrow it down and understand what that item is really going to give you the more long-term successful outcome that you need for creating these items. So I'm a big fan of that, of just the sequential numbers, if you will, and then using the system what it's designed for, filters, searches, narrowing down, that kind of thing, so that we can get to the item we want rather than trying to always box ourselves into a corner with this because of the intricacies of this human brain.
yes,
Great point.
that is. And right from the home screen up in the ribbon, we can copy this item to create a new one that's got similar features, adjust the inventory right from the screen, create a stock keeping unit where we can assign an inventory type item to different areas that can only be accessed that way.
Can you give me an example of that?
For instance, if I want only red bicycles in the blue warehouse, I can call that a stock keeping unit, where it's managed totally outside of the bicycle item card, but it's still related to the bicycle item card.
Got it.
And what I wanted to show you is that we can get to, from here, the unit of measures that Kurt talked about. Right now, this one is set to pieces, but we can certainly add units of measure for bicycles if we want to sell them by the truckload or whatnot. It will be bringing up a unit of measure, and I'm going to stop clicking into some of these, but it's very easy to add different unit of measures for an item.
So very similar in again, those attributes that we think about. I mean, when we cross ERP systems, a unique identifier, a description, a unit of measure, a price, all of it is there. It shouldn't be intimidating by any chance to be looking at a different system.
Right.
And Kurt, I think that's the beauty of it, is that when you have ERP experience in one platform, to some extent, you have ERP experience in every platform.
Correct.
In that it's not, that the concepts are very, very, very similar. It all comes down to, is the feature set this, or is the feature set this? Is it a subset? Is it a superset? And what's the user experience? And what are the other benefits that it might get for me versus, on-prem versus cloud and all the different things. So I think that's important for folks to understand. When you have experience in one ERP, to a certain extent, you have experience in all of them.
Right. And we can categorize, we can set the attributes for items, weight, gross weight, volume, things that matter and shipping and whatnot.
And just an observation, and I think you can help me with this. My screen was really simplistic, right? I just had a little bit of information there. And looking at what you're seeing here, I mean, there's a lot of information on this screen. And that could seem a little intimidating.
it can be cleaned up. Um, these are the screens that I have open for demonstration, but I can show less or show more if there's something that I was looking for but I don't see right away.
Mm-hmm.
And I can certainly personalize the screen, um, and hide fields permanently.
Mm-hmm.
They aren't deleted from the system, but they're deleted from the item card itself
Mm-hmm.
across the board, um,
Mm-hmm.
so that they don't interfere with the normal activities. You can see how many I have on hand.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
Yeah, if I click on this, it'll tell me how many I have on hand by location, um, different warehouses. It can tell me some upcoming activity, like it says that I have 5 on a sales order right now. So those are tied up. Probably indicates that I need to assemble 5. Uh, Again, different costing methods are available for items. I can set standard costs from a
Mm-hmm.
purchase. Pricing can be driven by calculations, either set the profit or set the price based on the profit I'd like, or just no relationship at all if I just want to set a price that I want to live with. Um, as far as how this item is handled, do I buy it? Do I
Hmm.
produce it? Is it an assembly? That relates to the kit that you guys were talking about earlier.
Mm-hmm.
In this case, it's a production order item, so it should have a production BOM associated with it. And I'm not seeing that field, but I'm sure, here we go. It's an assembled to stock item, so there's no BOM, uh, but I can go on, if if I wanted to, I could go up and click and look at the BOM that's tied to a production item. Um, as far as planning, I can set it to reorder a fixed quantity or minimum quantities, lot for lot,
Mm-hmm.
reordering if it's required. I can set it for reorder points. Right now the reorder point is when I run out, and
Mm-hmm.
the reorder quantity is set to 100. Um, Minimum order, maximum order quantities. So this ties to when I buy. This is tied to how I buy, if it's a purchase item.
You know what's interesting here, gentlemen? Not that we were going to contrast and compare, but a lot of these things that Bob is pointing out, are available to find within GP through another window,
Oh,
or through another menu. But what's amazing here is he's on one screen.
indeed,
And
indeed.
that's
It,
that's that's
it,
very, very refreshing to see.
yeah. So for the evaluation user, right? If it would certainly be a different experience depending on those roles that are set up, which might actually make it more akin to what we see in GP, right? So if I'm in an inventory role or a planning role, supply chain role, I may be able to see this data, but I can't do much with it. Okay, so effectively, it's not quite as useful, and I certainly can't act on it because my role limits it. So, if anything, it could be a little overwhelming looking at all of these fields at one time. And
Right. But
so,
again, we need to remind folks that Bob's in with godlike rights, I'm sure, as he can see, you know, everything he needs to see.
yep. And
Exactly.
so,
Yes.
Kurt, I want to circle back and take a look at GP again. And
Okay.
so,
Can I
because
can
I've
I
I've
add
taken
one
a
more
few notes
thing?
here. So yeah, go. But I don't want to circle back right now. I want to hear the
Right.
rest of what you
Item
have to show us, Bob.
tracking is available in BC, and I didn't hear Kurt talk about it, but I assume it is,
Mm-hmm.
with
Mhm.
serial numbers and lot
Yep.
numbers and
Yep.
Yep.
expiration dates and whatnot. And he pointed out, being able to go in and make inventory counts and all those um, processes are available from this screen too, as far as being able to create counting periods, adjust inventories, etc. It's all right here. Item reclassifications, the item journal. You don't have to typically navigate far to accomplish what you're trying to get done with an item.
But I think the tables are really an interesting change. And I'm thinking that people are going to have a preference one way or another. I think when we all get started in this manufacturing and we go back all the way to before MRP, we would write it down. You would write a bill of material on a piece of paper, which then became a spreadsheet, which then became individual items in the MRP system, well, MRP system, later ERP. And coming back to that table structure is really, really interesting. But I think there's going to be a personal preference. So, because, again, it might be a little overwhelming. It might be confusing. It might be more than a person needs. So I have a preference for just showing them what they need so as not to make it a more complicated onboarding and training. It's not that it would be. It's what is my personal preference when I'm choosing the system. But this makes a whole lot more sense in a lot of ways when you think of the business as a whole, when you think of the inventory as a whole or the manufacturing as a whole, and then I can see more information versus I'm myopic and I need to think about just that item and I don't want to confuse the situation.
Mm-hmm.
And can we customize that table view so we can see what columns we want?
Oh, we certainly can.
Yeah, so for instance, I would go and I would look at the inventory. If I were doing an inventory feature, inventory control function, then I would want to see when was the last cycle count, what was the last count, whatever those fields that I saw there in the item data in that field.
Yeah, I don't know if that field is available to bring in, but there is certainly many.
Right,
so
it may not be unlimited, but customizable.
Right, it is customizable. And actually, you say not unlimited, but with the new design feature that's available in Business Central, you can bring in fields from tables outside the database that we're working in now, and make them available too, and then it will generate the configuration package for you to bring to production so that field can be available also. But here is the list of fields that are not shown on the table.
I'm just trying to give all those people, reason to ask for the big wide monitor, the big curved monitor now, because that table is, this long instead of this long like it used to be.
Yeah, and so I talked a little bit about stock keeping units. There's a field that says whether or not a stock keeping unit has been generated for this item. And as soon as things get caught up, yes. So there are a few stock keeping units that are created for some of these items.
Got it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
All right. How about we circle back? Let's take a look at. I've got a few questions for GP. There's some things I'd like to see. Let's start with the standard cost. Okay. So you were looking at creating a new item, Kurt.
Yeah, and we're gonna just blow everybody's mind here in 2 seconds.
Fantastic. I'm looking forward to it. But you're cleaning up the mess if my mind blows.
Oh my goodness, it's a table view of inventory
there it is.
In GP. Oh my goodness.
See,
right?
And there it is, right? We're not trying to say one's better than the other, as you so eloquently said in the beginning, Kurt. It's just about different. When do we use it? How does it work? That sort of thing.
And again, this evolved, that navigation ability and how people navigated within an ERP system has evolved. GP kept up. The navigation list idea, that area where all my items are listed, and being able to do some searches or customization around, again, what Kurt sees as an end user,
Mm-hmm.
and then being able to interact with that item, whether that's to create a transaction from it,
Mm-hmm.
um, you do inquiry into it, etc. And when I hover on an item, I see more detail about it down below. Again, those quantities on hand, quantity
Mm-hmm.
allocated, quantity ordered. So a
Beautiful.
lot of what we see in that air quotes modern ERP,
Mm-hmm.
GP is that, in the sense that it has evolved over the years. And what we find is that us gray-haired old consultants, we live in that old mindset of how did we learn to use the product,
Mm-hmm.
even though it's evolved quite well in a lot of regards, so that we do have similar functionality. My available columns are not as broad as
Mm-hmm.
BC's, but our significant information is definitely here. My quantity available is right here, visible, etc. So
Well, with that
little
small tweak in the user interface, providing that data at the bottom of the screen eliminates the need for the columns, and now the company can save money on monitor size. Darn it.
yeah,
I
yep. I don't
tried,
need that
folks. I
big one.
tried to get you a bigger monitor.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. But again, that I wanted to make sure we pointed that out, that the interface is there, and then again a double click on that item, and I am back into that item maintenance card, right?
Mm-hmm.
As we were talking about, and then you had a specific question, Chuck, on where you
So,
wanted to go once we got in here.
yeah, so some of the things so standard costs, okay, and of course I see the field for that. You have standard and current cost,
Hmm.
which is
And
crucial for the
yep, and
manufacturers.
again, standard cost, cur cost, how those interact within GP,
Mm-hmm.
they definitely have a basis in how our valuation method is set up,
Mm-hmm.
right? If we are average perpetual, these take on different meaning than if they are LIFO, FIFO.
Mm-hmm.
In when are they updated and who updates them? Meaning,
Mm-hmm.
does the system maintain that value or does
Mm-hmm.
an end user maintain that value?
Mm-hmm.
And there's some critical differentiation happening based on the valuation method being utilized for that item.
Well, and that's a crucial point as well. In that, if I think about QuickBooks users out there that are considering that step, a QuickBooks user can be a bookkeeper, but
Mm-hmm.
they don't really get into this level of costing and understanding the impacts of that in terms of pricing and profit margins and all the different things that someone who's a deep CFO, highly experienced, is going to really understand and want to get into that and make sure that it works in a way that's best for the company or most advantageous to the company, as
Yep,
well as the
absolutely.
customer for pricing. So there's a major difference in that regard. But other than that, again, under the hood, they're probably, it works the same. You're experienced in one to a certain extent. You're experienced in all.
Mm-hmm.
So, so how many are on order and how many are on hand?
Quantity on order, quantity available, bottom right corner.
Mm-hmm.
This is global at this point
Mm-hmm.
in the sense that it is for my entire company.
Mm-hmm.
If we were to actually go in a little bit deeper, or had I set my navigation list up a little different, obviously I can have quantities at different sites.
Mm-hmm.
So again, that's my global.
Mm-hmm.
But if I were to scroll through the sites where this happened to be,
Mm-hmm.
those numbers could be different, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it is a multi-site type software where I could have multiple warehouses, multiple
Mm-hmm.
places I'm doing business, and how many of those goods do I have on hand at any one of them?
Mm-hmm.
And you can see that this is rolling with zeros as I scroll through my sites. But again, this navigation list can also give us some of that information on where those quantities are available if we build
Mm-hmm.
it out correctly.
Okay. So now I don't want to go too deeply into things like in-process work orders and that sort of thing. I'll skip over that, but let's go back to inventory. So in terms of the planning data, so minimum order quantity, economic order quantity, reorder point, things like that.
Oh, absolutely, all available in the sense of item resource planning. And again, BC also sits well there in the
Mm-hmm.
ability to, if it's planned, lot for lot, right? So, typically, again, there's not a lot of shortcomings when it comes to the idea of can GP do that for us. Where we typically have those, really kind of conversations, it is around the attributes of that item in the sense that, man, and again, you get into different organizations where we need to track revision levels and all of that. It starts getting a little more complicated at that point. But for the most part, GP is a quality product that's evolved well over the years.
Love it. So, and in terms of the planning, so the thing that I saw that really I loved seeing was the data for planning inventory counts. Don't get me wrong. I don't want to have to do inventory counts. I'll accept cycle counts. I don't want to have to shut the company down like we used to, mobilize every employee in the company to be counting 100% of the inventory on one day. I far prefer cycle counts maximum. But where is that information in terms of when it was accounted last, that sort of thing?
On our item itself, not as readily available. There are reports that can be generated for that.
Okay, perfect. Yep.
And then again, I can identify that information, but it's not right at my fingertips, counted on July 1st. However, the ease of cycle counting within GP is there, and again, generating that cycle count based on ABC codes, etc. Once it's generated, it can be exported to Excel where that count work could be done and then imported back from Excel without any third-party products whatsoever.
Love that. And honestly, that's a pretty realistic. There's two ways to do it. One, you can do a cycle count in real time with mobile data. Okay. Yeah. Two, you're going to do it structurally where a report would suffice very, very well.
Yeah.
And then, which is essentially mobile data. Where you take that report, you have an Excel spreadsheet, you do your count, you enter it in the Excel spreadsheet, you report it back. There's a lag in that data entry, but not enough to get exercised over. Typically.
Correct. And again, I use that Excel comment because I do know BC from a Excel interface. Being able to interact with that window is quite simplistic. So that puts us on par between the two products quite well. Our stock
there's also that a danger in that, yes, I can do this and I need to have it in real time, and that can inflate your costs to operate your business. So if you don't need it, don't invest in it necessarily, whether it be from a software perspective, not that the prices are going to be any issue there, but not from a software perspective, but from a workflow perspective. Why do more than you need to do if you're not going to do anything with it, if it's not going to deliver value and it's not going to have any kind of impact? So you can't assume it's a problem is the issue. It always comes back to how does your business operate? What are your workflows?
Yep. And there's that stock count window, being able to add things to this and how it's going to be counted. There's routines within the mass add to do so, again, to set that structure. And when we start the count, generates a counting report if I was going to do it on paper or after it's been started, obviously, then I can export it to Excel. So there's
beautiful,
kind of a whirlwind on very light feature functionality on both products, but very, very comparable.
All right. We're just about through our time, but I have one important question for both of you because you brought it up, Kurt, and that is item revision levels. Item revision levels can really be a bear. Not all systems handle it gracefully, and so we develop workarounds because item 1000 revision C is not the same as item 1000 revision D, even if they are exactly the same in form, fit, and function. For inventory purposes, they are potentially different. So how would you do that in the item? Is it a workaround or does it handle the revisions? And then we're going to go ask Bob the same thing and see it in BC.
At the item level, At the
Hmm.
item level here, I'm going to say we would be working around
We
that.
do a
And
workaround.
again, we'd be doing a workaround.
Hmm.
I'd be using a user-defined field,
Hmm.
probably tracking that,
Hmm.
and or using utility to, increment my other ways I've done it in the past, Chuck,
Hmm.
is increment that item number,
Hmm.
right? To then match the manufacturing revision number that's happening on the MRP side of the house.
Hmm.
But again, clearly clearly visible at the inventory side in GP, we usually have to kind of tweak around that in order to see that rev level.
No, that is not uncommon. Well, what
Yeah,
I want to
absolutely.
avoid is putting Rev C in the item number,
Yes,
if at all
sir.
possible.
Yeah. So we typically use again, like I said, a user-defined field,
Hmm.
and go from there.
And honestly, that's extremely clean.
Mm.
So it's extremely clean. It's not confusing at all, as long as people truly understand that Rev C is
Yeah.
not the same as Rev D.
Or you
Rev,
tie it all the way back to that bill of material or that
yep,
manufacturing
yep,
structure, and
potentially,
again at a reporting level, be able to
hmm,
see that.
yep. And it might be that the manufacturer of the paint changed.
Correct.
It might be that simple. They're still acceptable from form, fit, and function, but they are different parts because if the paint starts to flake, you want to know what paint was on there.
Absolutely.
So how about we go back to BC? If you can get into that a little bit, Bob, and then we can wrap this up. I bet you can guess
So
how I started my career.
yes,
In the dairy industry, we could make vanilla ice cream about 30 ways, but the SKU going to the grocer was the same, right? But it
Then
was
that's
still
too much
vanilla
for my
ice
brain to
cream, and it
handle.
still had the same content as far
Hmm.
as sugar, etc. So,
Hmm.
but different recipes, and we needed to know which recipe was used.
right. We're talking about item revisions. Is that
Item
where we're at?
revisions, yes, sir. Yeah.
Yes. Well, I mean, I've talked on stock keeping units, so we could
Hmm.
certainly set up different stock keeping units to track it that way.
Hmm.
If it's an item tracked um, type material with lot numbers or serial numbers, we could certainly set up a separate numbering system for the revision and track it that way.
Hmm.
Variant codes are available to track different things that way, or just block the item, create a new one, update any bill of materials that item
Hmm.
is used in,
Hmm.
and you're good to go. Just a
So,
slight
so the
change of the
variant, the variant is a really interesting idea because you wouldn't always block the item.
right,
I might have 1,000 of them that are with a paint manufactured by my previous vendor, and that item, that paint is discontinued, but those products are perfectly saleable.
right,
However, now I have a new item. Now there's other, we're not even going to get into, yes, I could have either one, dual source going into a single item, different conversation for a different day. But just in this rudimentary example, the variation is a very interesting way of handling that,
yes. And
or the variant.
I hovered over
Mm-hmm.
the text for variant mandatory if exists, and it
Mm-hmm.
brings up a description of what that field can be used for. And in this case, specifies whether a variant must be selected if variants exist for the item.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're trying to work through some older material and you set up the new item variant, well,
Mm-hmm.
you can say that you want to
Mm-hmm.
force flushing out inventory before this
Mm-hmm.
item gets used. So, I
So
mean,
that's one
there's,
way,
yes,
potentially.
potentially. Um, did,
And then another way could be do exactly the same as GP, and that is set up a new item,
set up a new
okay,
item.
accounting with a
Yes,
new bill of material, potentially a new cost, et cetera, that is unique
yes,
to that Rev
yes,
D in
yes.
this example.
The new item is very user friendly as far as
Hmm.
moving to new costs.
Yep,
It
without
just
a doubt.
is. Yeah, when you're trying to change cost in an existing item, it, it's not as user friendly as just starting with a clean slate. I will say
Yep.
that.
Recognizing that we do know that standard costs can be changed over time in a cycle, if you will. Next year the standard cost will be different. So you have current cost and you have standard cost. And so, but again, the least often you have to touch those things, the less time it takes. And so you have more productive organization. So again, all these differences lead back to this is cafeteria style in a lot of ways. This is an enablement platform to enable what works for you in the most productive way.
Yes.
So
Microsoft listens to its clients. If somebody's asked for a feature that works better for their business, Microsoft has done a good job of building it into their software systems, GP and BC together.
well, I think that's enough said. I would do a mic drop, but I really don't want to break my mic. So,
Well done.
all right, Kurt, do you have any closing thoughts?
No, I just, again, every time we do this, the excitement's building, and on my side, as I start thinking about transitioning and looking at, options for our clientele, that there's some amazing options out there, and BC being one of them. And I've got a lot to learn, but I'm pretty confident I can learn it, right? I see those similarities, and it doesn't intimidate me.
And as we go through this, I know we're going to see over and over and over again. Honestly, you can use either one. If you've got GP, stay on GP for as long as the winds keep you there. And when you're ready to go, go. Because clearly these differences, they're there, but it doesn't change what you're able to accomplish.
Correct.
And I think that's crucial. Bob, do you have any closing thoughts?
No, the same thing. If you're happy and successful with GP as your operating system, stick with it. But if you're expanding and you're looking at buying an additional software unit to go along with GP and expand your business, well, maybe it's time to upgrade and look at what BC has to offer.
Right.
Yep.
And until then, sock away your money and plan for your capital budget for whenever you're going to do it.
Whenever you're ready, we're here.
Amen, brother. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much. I love taking these dives. Everything you get to learn, Kurt, it's just as exciting for me. I love seeing it, because the better I am, then the better I'm going to be for our customers, and I know you guys feel the same way. Thank you so much for tuning into the Turnkey 365 ERP Academy. Stay tuned for the next episode when we're going to take more deep dives into GP and BC. Cheers.